Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking a stack of regulations straight from Canadian provincial and territorial authorities.
Florida's a good one.
Yeah, plus industry codes. And these define the absolute line between ethical, necessary insurance sales and, well, frankly, the kinds of behaviors that put agents in regulatory hot water.
And clients in financial jeopardy, that's the core of it, right?
Exactly.
Our mission today is a deep dive into what the industry strictly defines as unfair, misleading, or deceptive practices. We're looking at the specific ways that life and accident and sickness agents can sometimes intentionally prioritize their own commission.
Their own immediate gain over your genuine long-term interest.
That's it.
We've managed to boil the source material down to 12 main categories of prohibited behavior. And what's fascinating is the sheer range. You have these subtle, high-pressure tactics that barely feel like pressure at all the way up to outright criminal acts.
Forgery, theft, things like that.
Exactly. And to keep this instantly digestible, we're using the named examples from the sources to clearly illustrate where that line is crossed. So if you have ever bought a life policy, an annuity, or even an RRSP through an agent, these stories are your essential guide to staying protected.
Let's unpack this material, starting right where every bad decision begins, the initial sales pitch.
Right, where the pressure is applied and incentives start to skew the advice. Okay, let's start with a classic violation, Todd selling. It's a term of art, but the definition is simple. It's the prohibited practice where purchasing one product is made conditional on buying another.
And the source material is crystal clear that this is prohibited because the transaction benefits the agent, not the client.
Okay, so give me the example.
The example here really shows the power dynamic at play. We have Anik, a life insurance agent, telling her client Gary that he qualifies for an RRSP loan, a registered retirement savings plan loan.
Good news for Gary, right?
You'd think so. But here's the twist. Anik tells Gary the loan qualification is conditional on him transferring all of his current RSPs into investment products from her company.
Wait, so the loan was contingent on moving his entire existing portfolio, and that transfer, that generates immediate, often large, commissions for Anik, right?
Exactly. And crucially, that condition was deceptive. It was untrue. Gary trusted Anik, and she exploited that trust to generate commissions on products that, he may not have needed or that might have been inferior to what he already had.
Only Anik benefited. Unethical.
Completely.
So having seen how agents use conditions, let's look at how they use gifts. That brings us to inducing to insure.
Right. Instead of forcing a condition, this involves using a gift or an offer of payment to convince a client to buy.
And it's not just about massive payoffs either. The sources show how even small incentives can cross that regulatory line.
Precisely. Take Lorraine. She's trying to win a group insurance plan contract for a big company. She learns another agent is competing hard for it, so what does? She buys the company's vice president a case of very expensive wine.
Hoping he'll choose her business.
Of course. That gift, intended to sway the decision, is an illegal inducement. The advice should be based purely on the best product, not on the quality of the wine.
I see the principle. The decision must be uninfluenced. But what about offers that just look like a discount? The source material gives an example of Nadia offering a client a discount on a policy benefit, or recommending she'll add a term rider free of charge if the client buys a permanent life policy. How is a discount inducing?
Because it's still an unauthorized alteration of the price or benefit structure just to secure the sale. It's a bribe, really, even if it comes in the form of perceived value.
Okay.
If an agent has to sweeten the pot with a freebie or personal discount, it suggests the product itself wasn't the bait, or the agent is overriding standard pricing rules for their own personal gain.
That leads directly into our next one, premium rebating, which sounds like a discount, but is specifically defined as an unfair act where an agent gives back all or part of the premium to the client.
This is a direct cash transaction, usually. We see this with Irving and Stephen. Stephen was hesitant about signing a life insurance policy, so Irving just offered to pay Stephen's very first premium out of his own pocket.
As an incentive to sign.
Right. Paying back that premium money, directly or indirectly, is specifically what the Insurance Act of Ontario and other regulators define as a prohibited, unfair practice. It's designed to bypass the client's informed consent.
So if we look at those first three tied selling, inducing, and rebating, they all target the initial commitment. They're ways agents can contaminate the very first step.
They skew the handshake, absolutely.
Now, having seen how agents manipulate the initial handshake, let's move into the highest commission earners. Manipulating the contracts you already hold. This is the high-stakes world of policy replacement.
And it's often driven purely by the incentive of earning a huge new commission on an existing policy. These are famously known as churning and twisting.
And industry bodies like the Canadian Life and Health Insurance Association, or CLHIA, consider them unacceptable.
Deeply unacceptable because they almost always disadvantage the client.
So let's define them clearly, because the consequences here are severe. First, churning. That's the internal replacement.
Right. This is when an agent encourages you to give up one product for another, usually from the same insurer, simply so the agent can benefit from the new transaction commission.
And the example of Christine is a perfect demonstration.
It is. Christine took over an existing block of clients and immediately started looking for replacement opportunities. She advised one client to convert an existing RRSP into a term annuity for income and then reinvest the non-required portion into something called an individual variable insurance contract, or IVIS.
Can you just quickly clarify what an IVDS is?
Sure, think of an IVIS as a segregated fund product. Crucially for Christine, it pays out much higher commissions to the agent than the original RRSP investment might have.
So she earned a commission on the annuity and on the new investment.
She essentially created two new commission payments where none were necessary. A double dip.
And the sources confirm this led to her contract being terminated and a lawsuit from the client's family. It shows that these unnecessary internal moves, disguised as prudent financial advice, have massive professional and legal consequences.
And if that's internal, then you have twisting.
The external replacement.
Persuading a client to terminate a policy to replace it with one from a different insurer. The risk here is immense because the agent profits, but crucial information about the financial consequences is withheld.
I see the Independent Financial Brokers of Canada Code of Ethics states agents must only recommend replacement if it is genuinely in the client's best interest. Yeah. But what exactly are those withheld consequences?
The examples are stark. Agent Alexi recommends replacing a policy with substantial cash value, but he omits three key massive consequences. First, the tax consequences of canceling the policy. That cash value is suddenly taxable. Second, he omits the beginning of a new 2-year suicide clause. And third, a brand new 2-year contestability period.
Whoa, let's stop on that, the contestability period. For listeners who don't follow insurance rules closely, what does restarting that period actually mean? That sounds like a huge risk.
It is the biggest risk of twisting. When you buy a new life insurance policy, the insurer generally has 2 years to investigate and potentially deny a claim based on misrepresentations made during the application, even if they're minor or unintentional.
Okay.
So if Alexi convinces the client to replace a policy that's already passed its 2-year contestability period with a new one, that client is now vulnerable again for 2 new years. If they die during that period, the insurer can investigate and potentially refuse payment.
Solely because of Alexi's pursuit of a new commission. That is genuinely alarming. The client takes on all this new risk purely for the agent's gain.
And we see a similar problem with investment products. An agent convinced a client named Shabir to surrender a 3-year deferred annuity for a replacement product. He conveniently omitted the exit fees that the new product had higher investment risks.
Yeah, and that the products were fundamentally different.
Exactly. Replacing an existing product requires total transparency about financial loss, surrender charges, and the risks involved. Twisting agents consistently fail to provide that.
Okay, let's transition now from that commission-driven world to the crucial issue of integrity in documentation and presentation. Deceptive statements, inaccurate paperwork.
This falls under misrepresentation, a major violation. It's issuing or circulating any statement that is false, misleading, or just incomplete by omission.
The newsletter example from the source is frighteningly specific because it shows the long-term liability. Agent John sends a newsletter falsely claiming that ABC Life Cover products have a 100% guarantee on all life payments, no questions asked.
Which is almost never true.
Right. Years later, a claim is refused. The beneficiary sues John, using that single false newsletter as evidence of misrepresentation.
One false line years ago completely exposed him to liability. It proves every piece of client communication has to be verifiable and accurate.
And agents are also strictly prohibited from misusing company-provided illustrations. They can't manually change them or manipulate the software just to create unreasonable expectations.
This rule is designed to ensure clients see accurate projections. The example here is Gary. Gary gets a client illustration, finds the results disappointing. The cash value isn't high enough, so he just modifies it himself.
How?
By removing the surrender charges to make the policy appear more appealing. This is prohibited because it directly misinforms the client about the true financial obligations if they decide to terminate the policy early.
It's essentially faking the results. Finally, in this segment, we have the simple negligence of unnecessary delay in delivering policies. Why is timing so critical here?
Because agents must deliver policies or evidence of coverage within a reasonable time to protect the client's interests. Coverage status can be contingent on that delivery.
And the consequences can be tragic, as shown with Kenneth. He received a policy for delivery the afternoon before he went on a weeks-long vacation.
And decided to just leave it until he got back.
Right. While Kenneth was away, the client died. The estate took legal action because that unnecessary delay had serious negative consequences for the policy status. It highlights that the agent holds the responsibility for that final, timely delivery.
Now we move into serious operational breaches, starting with a practice called fronting.
Okay, what is that?
It's when a licensed agent uses their credentials to cover for an unlicensed person.
So a licensed agent allows an unlicensed person to solicit business and submit it under their name. Or an unlicensed person completes the sale and a licensed person just signs off as the agent of record.
Usually splitting the commission. This is so improper for the consumer because they are dealing with someone unqualified, someone who hasn't passed the exams. And it's incredibly risky for the licensed agent.
The example is Donald, the manager who recruits Abner, an unlicensed person, and signs Abner's client application as the agent of record.
And they split the commission. Donald risks losing his license entirely and faces substantial chargebacks. Fronting undermines the entire regulatory framework.
We also look at a highly specific issue, trafficking in insurance. This is when an agent acts as an intermediary between a policyholder who wants to sell their policy,
Usually universal life, whole life, or term.
and a potential third-party buyer.
The mechanics usually involve selling the policy through assignment. They're often known as viatical settlements, where individuals who are terminally ill assign their policies to a corporation for a lump sum.
So why is this prohibited in some places, like Newfoundland and Labrador? It sounds like they're just selling an asset.
The issue isn't the settlement itself. The problem is when the agent profits by acting as a middleman. It's like they're trading the client's life policy as a secondary market commodity. It raises huge ethical red flags about agents profiting from human mortality.
The industry wants agents focused on providing primary coverage, not acting as brokers for life settlements.
Precisely.
That makes the example of Jamie very clear. He's an agent and a mutual fund salesperson, and he arranged the sale of viatical settlements to his clients. He was supposed to place all business through his employer, but he didn't.
He made a direct external profit on the sales, engaging in unethical and potentially illegal behavior outside his licensed capacity.
And the last major operational rule is holding out improperly, misleading the public about your qualifications.
Right. Agents must post their license publicly, use their license name. You can't just make things up.
I appreciate that the source material includes specific rules here too. Like, you cannot claim to be a financial planner unless you hold a recognized designation from the Financial Planning Standards Council.
So when Cynthia prints new business cards with a designation she hasn't earned, thereby misleading clients about her qualifications, she is holding out improperly. It's a form of deception because clients base their trust on those perceived credentials.
Now let's move into the final and most serious category. Violations that constitute outright criminal conduct, where professional misconduct crosses into felony territory.
First and foremost is misappropriating client funds, also known as commingling. This is illegal. It means taking client money or property received for a specific purpose and fraudulently misapplying it.
The Alberta Code of Conduct is really clear on this. Agents must never deposit client money into their personal account and must pay all funds collected directly to the insurer. This seems like the #1 red flag for a client.
It is the biggest red flag. The example we have is Agent Joe. He asked 2 separate clients to make checks payable directly to him. One for a PFSA investment, one for a loan repayment.
And he deposited both into his own personal account.
Lied to the clients about sending the money to the insurer, and then used the funds for his own purposes.
This moves far beyond a regulatory fine.
Oh, absolutely. Because he defrauded the clients, deceived them, and the amount was substantial, Joe was subsequently arrested and convicted of theft over $5,000 under the criminal code.
That's not just losing a license. That is a serious felony charge. Jail time.
Yes. And then there is making a false document or forgery, a criminal offense involving knowingly creating a false document, like forging signatures.
And we have 2 chilling examples.
We do. They show the spectrum of this crime. Agent Harry knew his wealthy client was terminally ill and had no family or beneficiary. Harry conspired with a friend, forged the client's signature on an application to name that mutual friend as the new beneficiary.
Intending to steal the death benefit.
Outright high-level fraud. But even professional shortcuts count. Agent Alessio submitted a false document by signing as a witness to client signatures on an application, declaring he'd completed it in person when he had never even met the client.
And that false witnessing violates professional standards. It can even invalidate the contract.
It can. The final prohibited practice is defamation. This might seem less severe than forgery, but it involves maliciously criticizing or being derogatory about any colleague, agency, or insurer.
And it's explicitly unethical because it poisons the well of public trust.
Right. Agent George, upset that another agent named James acquired one of his potential clients, sent malicious and derogatory emails about James, his office manager, and his company to all his own clients.
Which goes directly against the ethical mandate to avoid discrediting colleagues or companies in the eyes of the public.
So we have walked through a dozen distinct named ways an insurance agent can fail to meet professional, regulatory, and ethical standards across Canada.
Spanning everything from a case of wine to theft over $5,000.
Yep.
What's so striking, once you see the entire spectrum, is that the root cause is unified. Whether it's the manager enabling an unlicensed friend or the agent encouraging replacement by omitting the contestability period. The behavior is all driven by the desire to shift the financial benefit away from the client.
Exactly. Every one of these prohibited practices shares that fundamental goal, maximizing the agent's commission payout at the client's expense. Knowing these specific actionable terms like churning, twisting, and the consequences of restarting a contestability period is crucial for you, the listener, to instantly identify potentially unethical behavior when it happens.
We've seen the specific ways agents can exploit trust and manipulate information, paperwork, even basic licensure. For you, the client, what is the single most reliable safeguard you can put in place to protect yourself when facing a complex financial product where the advice sounds almost too good to be true? Is it reading the fine print, or is it ensuring you understand who is ultimately benefiting from the transaction? That's the provocative thought to carry with you. How do you verify the advice is truly independent of the commission?